In the last episode of Radio KD8TTE, we showed how to use the custom form in FLMSG. Now this week we're going to get to implementation, how to build a custom form in the first place, how to see the custom form, and best of all, how to process collected information that comes in that data structured format. Stick around.
Black Swan, Black Swan.
So to get clear on this concept, we're going to talk about a newsletter, but this can be any case where people need to communicate. We're just building a network that is going to support people. So we're going to walk through this example showing how people are going to use the network to communicate. The specific use case is going to be the newsletter, but it can apply to any condition. So we start out with the recipient, who is going to be receiving all of the information in from the field. In this case, it'll be our QSP radio newsletter editor. Now we're going to have a contributor, somebody out there providing information that is going to be used for the newsletter content. The way that that is going to come in is by having it in a format that the editor is going to be able to use. In this case, we're talking about the K2S file, and specifically one created for the QSP newsletter contributions. To make that work effectively, the contributor is going to use the FLMSG application, the custom form QSP share. That gives her the ability to complete all of the information she's going to submit formatted for transmission, the K2S file, the very same set of data that the editor needs to read now that the K2S file is ready for transmission. The radio operator at the sending station, that is where the writer is located, is going to need to get that to the editor. So the radio operator then is going to take a look at what options do I have, and I might have an internet option. Let's just take that away because we're focusing on radio here. We might have some other options. WinLink might be readily available, but let's take that away because we know that the receiving station is going to be on the Black Swan net, and that means that we can perform a transmission directly to the receiving station via Black Swan. Now, the radio operator at the QSP newsletter location has a copy of the K2S file. It is an exact copy of what the author created in the first place. In this way, the radio operators at the transmit station and the receive station, aided by the Black Swan net, are the network being used by the contributor and the newsletter editor. Now, if it turns out that that was not an option, then the transmit station will go maybe to WinLink, knowing that there is a path from the WinLink radio email system into the QSP editor station. Sending by WinLink means that the transmit station operator is trusting that the WinLink radio mail server will take that and relay it on. That's a reasonable expectation because WinLink is doing that sort of thing all the time. It is an actively managed system. On the other hand, if WinLink is not available or there is some other communication plan, it might be possible that the transmit station is able to use a high-speed network, an IP network maybe, something provided by a mesh local area network wirelessly connecting everybody at that site together. A designated relay station could be the one who actually receives that K2S file from the transmitting station. Once the relay station has the K2S file, the relay station can then perform the service of getting it to the receive station. Maybe it's the relay station that has the ability to use the Black Swan net to get to the receiving station. Maybe the relay station will use WinLink to get to the receiving station. In any case, this illustrates the point that there can be relay that will perform a function of gateway from one system to another. In any case, any one of our contributors is able to rely on their radio operator and the network that the radio operator is using to be able to get that K2S file to the QSP editor. Once the QSP editor has the K2S file. He can take a look at it. He can open FLMSG. He's got the QSP share custom form, so he can open it up. He can look at it. He could decide he's going to print them, and he can see all of these different contributions. That's the way that a lot of people use FLMSG and FLMSG custom forms. On the other hand, there's maybe a process that he wants to go through. Maybe he wants to take those contributions and not just look at them, but do something else with them. In fact, that is what happens. A piece of software will be used to read those contributions and to produce part of the QSP newsletter, the upcoming issue. The point is that we don't want to assume that we know what the recipient is going to do with the information when we are part of this process. We don't want to assume that the only option the recipient has is to see it on the screen or to print it or to make a PDF version. The power of this system is that we are creating an electronic record, a data format that can be readily created and seen with FLMSG, but can also be handled like any other data can. All right, let's talk about making the form, capturing the right information. Remember, the people in the process, they are going to be really important. We need to make sure that we know what the consumer of the information actually needs. Now, they might not even know everything that they need right away. Assume that you're going to make one. You're going to walk everybody through the process, and then when they see the result, it's going to make them think of the thing that they have forgotten. That's all right. That's how a lot of software gets developed. You might need to ask some other questions along the way, maybe some things that they didn't even think of, like how long is this information going to be good? We might need to think about things like circuit management, so we have to establish some kind of a standard for quality of service. So if something comes through and it's going to be good for only 10 minutes, it's not going to be held up by something that's an enormous transmission that would in fact be good for a period of 8 or 12 hours. So let's go back to our QSP example. It's a weekly newsletter. We don't have a lot of urgency that we need to deal with. You just need to get your content to the editor by noon on Sunday of each week to have the contribution be part of that week's newsletter. If you miss the deadline, it's no big deal. Your content simply rolls to the next issue. And of course, you've got all week. You don't need to transmit it right up against that deadline. You can send it in on Monday morning if you like. It just doesn't matter. Along the way, you've got that time to get the message to the editor. So to implement a custom form, we're going to build some HTML. HTML is the hypertext markup language. It just describes how to display text and other parts of a page with clickable elements inside of a web browser. That's called hypertext. It also has some basic features for being able to put information into a form. The FLMSG manual has a whole section on this, and we're not going to go through every case. This video is meant to be a demonstration, not a reference. In the last video, we showed you where to get the FLMSG custom form for QSP, so you can download it and you can walk through it along with this video at the same time. In fact, I recommend that after you watch this video end to end, make sure you download the custom form if you haven't already, and then go through the form along with the video so you can see exactly what's going on as I point out various features along the way. So again, the use case for our implementation here is that we have a contributor who needs to provide some content and an editor who needs to receive the content and then work with the content to produce the next issue of the newsletter. The contributor matters because the newsletter is really all about the contributors. We want them to be able to tell others what kinds of things they're doing. But some things can seem repetitive if you're in the same net every week, for example. We don't want to put pressure on our contributors to think of creative ways to say the same thing over and over again. If someone just wants to be able to check a few boxes to say what they've been doing, that's a valuable and encouraging contribution. It reminds others that people are out there. If somebody wants to add more information, write a story, that's great. We can take that too, and that's the reason that we have the box where there's just a whole bunch of text you can type. The point is to make it easy to contribute and to capture routine things and give a chance to share anything special. The editor is obviously important because that's who facilitates the process. The editor is compiling all of these contributions. There's no need for us to look at a printout and have somebody type it all back in again. We have an electronic form. Each one of these contributions is a data record that can be read, it can be organized and formatted for inclusion in the newsletter. Software can do that job. As the newsletter is intended to encourage readiness for emergency communication, its regular operation is important. As a means of fostering a sense of community, it's important that we capture the week-by-week operating experience that we're gaining. To encourage us to keep developing capability, we want to give people a chance to talk about things other than what's scripted. Okay, getting into the implementation, we're going to see the HTML form itself. You can download it, you can take a look at it, you can install it in your own FLMSG and work with it. You can also, of course, send the result to the QSP newsletter editor. In fact, that would be a great thing to do. That way you can see not only what does FLMSG produce as the K2S file, but you'll be able to see the result of your contribution being added to all of the others, and you can become a part of the community that is sharing information on recent activity and helping to ensure ongoing readiness.
All right, so we begin with the HTML source. We're going to go down to the body so that we can see how it presents. This is the meat of what we are able to see in the browser. We have a pre-tag that is how we define with a fixed font what the header looks like, which we're doing because the newsletter is all ASCII text. It's meant to be seen in a fixed width font. So let's go ahead and start up a web browser and we'll see what it looks like when rendered. So now we can see side by side with the HTML source on the right side, and on the left side we see it rendered in a browser. Scrolling down, we'll get to some instructions, and then down below that comes the form that we are going to complete. So we can see your message, and we've got one of those hello, my name is name tag kinds of things. That's implemented with an image, and you can see the image source right there is actually in line. It does not refer to an external resource. The reason for that is, of course, if we don't have internet connectivity, we want to be able to see the image itself. We could make it an external file and refer to it that way, as we are already distributing with a zip, but this will make it so that we have fewer parts that need to be replaced or need to be shipped with the HTML source. We can just put everything in line. Now, the way we're able to make that work is the image is simply encoded with base 64. If you're using a GNU system, Linux, if you are using any other kind of Unix system, you've got a command line utility for producing base 64 encoded versions of anything. If you don't happen to have that, there are utilities for other operating systems, of course. There are even online utilities. Base 64 is nothing more than a data encoding method that will take whatever you've got as input and produce a version of it that will use one of 64 different characters for being able to make that representation. That means that we're able to look at it as plain ASCII, and we can encode the plain ASCII inside of the HTML. So let's go ahead and use that base 64 utility. We're going to encode the Black Swan logo. We're going to redirect the output to a blackswanlogo.jpg.b64. Now we can have a look at the base 64 encoded version of it, and there you see it's just plain text. We can just copy that and put it directly into the form. That's how I got that hello, my name is defined there in the HTML. I defined the ID for that. That's hello top, and I put also alternate text in there for hello. Now we move down and we go to the next row in the table, TR. That's the table row. So our first row is going to be the name. Our next row is going to be our call sign. We take a look at call sign and the class U. Now that's a style sheet. So up at the top in the head component of the HTML, I have put inline a style sheet. You can see that the class U has been defined here as a text transform and makes it all uppercase. That means call signs are always going to be presented in the browser as uppercase. Now we move down to location. We have a select element, and there's also some JavaScript. Now we've got a large number of options in here. The drop-down list includes all of the ARRL sections. And below that we have another image that's inline, and that is the bottom part of our name tag there. So that's how we grab the name, the call sign, and the location. We're going to come back to location, but first let's take a look at the main meat of the form that we're going to be completing here. So we now have a table. We've defined a table head. That's the T head element, and inside of there is TR, it's a table row. TD will be table data. So in there, we are defining the amateur band that we are working. We define how that's going to look with the COL class. Again, that's a style sheet that defines the column width. It defines how we're going to align the text and also the style of the text as it's presented. It's going to be italic. And that's how we're going to identify our header visually when the person is looking at the form and wants to fill things out. We now move on to the body of the table. Our first row is going to be for 160 meters. We have elements, checkboxes for each of these columns: phone, CW, NBEMS, WinLink, packet, and FT8. They are checkboxes, which means that they can be turned on or off, and they don't affect whether the others are turned on or off. Again, we look at the style sheet and we see the class R. Looking at the style sheet shows that it aligns the text to the right, and that's what we're doing for our band definitions. You can see that in the 160 meter class. And we look at the rest, the class C, that shows that the text is centered. So those checkboxes are going to be centered in the column the same way as the headers are. Now we get down to 60 meters and we notice that we do not have a WinLink checkbox. The reason for that is that we don't have any RMSs on 60 meters. It's only 5 channels there, and so we don't have automated activity happening there. If we move down to 30 meters, we see the same thing. We see the definition for 30 meters. It's there, but there is no checkbox for phone because in Amateur Spectrum, there is no allocation for phone mode on 30 meters. And you can see we have the same sort of thing repeating from band to band. We simply define for each of those rows what the names are going to be for that particular column. Unlike a spreadsheet where we can define both the row and the column independently, each of the elements in this form must have a unique name. And that's the reason that we have the definitions as we do. It also means that the code tends to be very large because we have to define everything explicitly. That's all right. Moving on to other activity, we are able to see how we have those things defined. That's where we pick up things like our shortwave reception, our programs, and so on. We can see that again defined here. We have another table. We have another table body. And that is where we define, again, with checkboxes, which of the activities somebody's participated in. The way that we do our headers in this case is by using the call span parameter. So we span 2 columns. The reason we do that is our shortwave reception column is going to span both the column that has the definition of what the activity is and the checkbox that is to its right. We do the same thing for each of the 3 columns under other activity: shortwave reception, programs, and events. In all cases, we define a table row, and the table row is going to include the text as well as the checkbox next to it. And of course, each checkbox has a unique name. Moving down to anything else, this is where we capture any of the discussion or where there's any free text that needs to be completed. People can write entire articles in here if they want, and we're more than happy to see that happen. This is a big advantage of using a form like this as opposed to something like a WinLink Net check-in form. That's defined in WinLink specifically and specifically for checking in to say that you're there. This, on the other hand, is a custom form created for the purpose of capturing everything that you want to share with the community of QSP newsletter readers. All right, I said that I would come back to the location because I'm going to point out a feature here. We've got a drop down for the section, and it has all of the ARRL sections included in there. Notice that after section is unspecified. When you choose a section, you're going to notice that to the right, there is additional updates. In fact, each of the sections for which we have the counties, we can have those populate in there so that when you go to Ohio, for example, you'll get a listing of all of the counties in Ohio. Go to another section like South Florida, and you'll notice that all of the counties are going to be in the SFL section. Go to another section entirely. Let's take a look at ID, Idaho. We don't have anything defined in there, so we just leave it at section. So when we're defining the location that you have, it's by the ARRL section, and inside of there is the county if we know all of the counties. And if we don't, we just say it's that section. The way that that's implemented is with a bit of JavaScript. And I say a bit of JavaScript, but it's a lot of redundancy because we're building up a data structure just in line there. So you see the way that it works is that we define each of the sections as a variable, and inside of each of there is an array. The array is going to be a listing of all of the counties, unless we don't know the counties or we just haven't programmed the counties in for that particular section. When the location is changed, that's the onChange element, it gets triggered, and then the config counties function is called. That's what makes the update to the location and offers the options for counties inside of there. The FLMSG user manual includes some more specificity about the different elements that FLMSG is able to make sense of. And of course, there are links below that will help you to see other examples. So now we're going to take a look at how we process the contributions as they come in. Now, the way that I want for this to work is I want to be able to start up this program in a terminal and simply paste the K2S file contents right into that terminal and have it spit out exactly what I would put into the newsletter. So to make that work, I'm going to use Python. I'm going to import the sys module, which is where I have access to standard in and its readlines method. If we look at the source of the K2S file over on the left, we can see that everything is going to be in a form of having a key on the left side, some unique name, and then on the right side of a comma, we are going to have a value that associates with it. That means I can use the CSV, the comma separated value module in Python, to be able to make sense of this as well. Because we are using the CSV reader, it's going to do the work for us of splitting each of the elements by comma. So we're first going to look to see, do we have a length of a row that is equal to 2? So now we can take a look at what we're doing with the county. In this case, we are looking for the county, and I want to see, is the county called section? Now, the reason that I have that in there is because I don't have every county in every ARRL section defined. The way that's going to work is I'm going to say simply what the name of the section is, and instead of putting county and then adding section afterward, I'm simply going to put the name of the section and the word section. We simply work our way through all of the keys to build up what our report's going to look like. There's a few things that we need to do with the text. New lines are going to be represented as \n in the K2S file. We want to take that and turn it into an actual new line. So in this case, we have \n, and so we're going to do a replace on our text here and turn that into a real new line, as well as the leading spaces necessary to make those paragraphs clear, which is exactly what we see here. Our text begins with all in all a pretty slow week, and we can see that text. It runs all the way through that paragraph. We get to the end, double new line. If you look on the upper right, you can see what the program has spit out is in fact new lines. I also make the source code available for you to look at and work your way through it as you like.
So in part 1 of the series, we showed that the FLMSG Custom Form captures structured information, data that can be stored, transmitted, and used. This video is part 2, how we created the custom form in the first place and how we process the data that the custom form will generate. Check links below for the downloadable stuff, and if you found this interesting, of course, like the video, share it with others who can benefit from it. This channel is focused on emergency communication, resilience, and modern procedures and systems for emergency communication. We've still got more to do, however. Subscribe so that you don't miss anything along the way. Until next time, this is Radio KD8TTE out.